Welcome back, everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage YouTube channel, and you are looking at, yes, finally, the debut of my most recent acquisition, a Singer 301A. This machine would have been built circa 1951, 1952. This machine was state of the art when it came out. Singer took a bobbin system that people really liked, the Singer 221 Featherweight, and they took the same bobbin, the same shuttle, the same hook design, and the same bobbin case, and they created really a whole new machine around that. This was called the Slant-O-Matic. Now, O-Matic is a suffix that's used on a lot of products during this period, because when you think about something automatic, many of us as consumers may not be impressed with that term much these days. But for many generations, the word automatic meant less time, more efficiency, less effort. And so you see it a lot in the advertising and marketing of all sorts of products, including sewing machines. The slant part, of course, is because this machine was the first domestic or home sewing machine that had a slant shank. What does that mean? That means that the feet and the attachments are slanted, and that is because the needle itself is off. It doesn't come perpendicular straight down on to the base of the machine when it comes to connect to your hook. If you were to compare this, let's pretend this little crewing tool was a needle. If this was the needle would be vertical. So it would be literally completely vertical, 90 degrees, right, to the machine, like almost every other vintage sewing machine is. To my knowledge, no other manufacturer created a slant. Well, if you take that, pretend my crewing tool here is the needle. If you tilt it back 10 degrees, that's exactly what you have with a slanted shank machine. Now, Singer did this, and I don't know if it was Singer. I believe it may have been Singer themselves or another company, but the slant idea was not new to industrial machines. In fact, it had been around for a while. You will notice that some features that would eventually become the newest thing in domestic machines were actually not completely new. We know this with home sergers. Home sergers really become a big deal in the 1970s and 80s, for example. But of course, overlock machines have been around since the 19th century. I mean, these sometimes things took a while to get into home machines. But this machine was also state of the art because of how it was made. Like the Singer Featherweight, although it has absolutely beautiful and incredibly made steel working parts. All of the drivetrain, the moving parts are made of steel, but the body was made of aluminum, and so was the chassis. In fact, this was done to make it lighter in weight. Now, aluminum is used for other things today, but back then it was pretty costly to do. But this machine was heavily marketed as a portable, and you might not think it's portable, but believe me, if you had to lug around some of the machines of its time, this machine was incredibly lightweight compared to the average sewing machine. And the Singer Featherweight, which also had an aluminum body with steel working components, the 301 weighs a bit more because it's a bigger machine, but it still benefits from a lightweight body construction. And typically, this machine was sold in a grass cloth, what is referred to as a trapezoid carry case. And this is the case for this machine. So you would buy it and you could take it with you, and it was, what if you wanted to go and sew it somewhere else? Or maybe you lived in a small location and you didn't really have a lot of room to even put a sewing table, in spite of the efforts of the salespeople at the dealerships who really wanted to sell you a sewing table, which were wonderful, but they were really expensive. So you could put a Singer 301 in a table, and if you did, it a tray. You would get a sewing table and you would have a tray. Now this tray, which I've shown in other videos, would be installed into the sewing table. And then you would actually take your machine and you would slide it into this tray, and then all you had to do was push a lever and you could slide it right out. The idea was it was quick and easy, and it was comparatively, compared to getting one of those big heavy bowling ball vintage machines out of a table. And it was incredibly clever. So when people say, well, Singer wasn't that innovative, I don't agree with that. I think Singer was cautious and a little, they would wait sometimes, but hopefully you're not going to have to wait anymore and hear me talk about how much I love this machine, because you know I do. I am going to show you, of course, we tested this already. We have a brand new LED light bulb. We have stitch length control. We have front bobbin winder, which I've just demonstrated. Love that bobbin winder. And of course we have back tacking. We can go in reverse. That was not unusual by early 1950s, but the slant shank and the lightweight were the big deal. Now what's the deal with the slant shank? According to Singer, they said that it would make it easier to see when you were stitching something. You could actually see the needle going in. That may be true. I don't know. Those of you who actually sew, unlike yours truly, let me know what you think. Does it help you? Does it really matter? Maybe it mattered in industrial sewing when some person was sewing for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and sewing very fast. I think that may have been the reason it showed up in industrial machines. Why it would show up in a home machine? Because Singer had the resources to create it, and they did. And it really, you can really call it an innovation. How useful it is, I leave that to those of you who actually sew. All right, so let's see how it's going to perform. Now, because I still have daylight, I've got my LED bulb here, I'm going to turn that off for the moment, because we might actually, at this time of day, might be able to see better. It's perfectly fine to use this LED, by the way, when you're sewing and you want to look at something, but on the camera it's going to be very disorienting, I believe, trying to see this machine. So, all right, so without further jabbering, let's see how it does. We're on long stitch. It's all going to be straight stitch because this is a straight stitch only machine. And I'm just going to, I've serviced the foot pedal, it's clean. I can get that lovely slow needle control. Singers are one of the only machines, because of their foot pedals and their motor designs, it's one of the only machines that will let you sew slowly with a carbon pile analog electromechanical pedal. There were others, I've had other machines do this from other brands. I don't want to say they're the only one. But that little clinking you heard was the little extension here. I just lifted it up. It is aluminum after all. All right, let's come over. We'll get ourselves another row, and then I'm going to sew more quickly. Let you see how quickly it can move. And we'll do some back tacking, which it is happy to do. And then I'm going to come over here, and we'll make a new row, and we're going to shorten that stitch. Let's see here. We'll come up, get it fairly short. Now remember, just something to mention to you all, especially those of you who are new. With modern sewing machines, they may have something in their computer boards that overrides you to prevent you from going to absolute zero unless you're going to do free motion work. Free motion work is possible on many machines, but most of the time you're not doing that. On an analog machine like this, okay, with all of its wonderful qualities, if you go all the way up to zero, this machine it'll move that needle and you'll create a giant ball of woe. You'll have a giant rat's nest. The first time I ever took that first machine that you see on my homepage, and I didn't know anything about sewing machines, I was like, well, maybe it runs. And so I got it threaded. I figured out how to thread it, and I started sewing with it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I created such a mess. In fact, I paid a sewer to come over and help me with it. We spent the whole time talking about the machine and undoing the mess. So we've come a long way since then, folks. So anyway, when you are setting your stitch length and you want something really fine, you don't want to set it to zero. Well, you say, well, how do I know? Because all I got are these numbers here, and I don't. There's no digital readout, but you don't need one. Watch the machine. Watch the fabric. So I've got it really, really fine here. As long as the fabric is feeding, even if it's slowly, you should be okay. So let's try that. Yeah, it's feeding. See how slowly it's moving? But it is moving. We should be okay. Now, let's see here. I've got a little bit of, yeah, my lower thread is coming through, so I'm going to adjust my tension just a bit there. And I'm still going to have a short stitch, but I want it down a little further. I think I had it a little too close. When you start to get a short stitch and it gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, you eventually are going to reach a point where you're not going to like what you see because the machine is running out of space to create the stitch you've asked it to do. So let's come over here and we'll make another run. I'm going to go really fast. And then we'll even back stitch. Okay, I got some things to show you guys and then we'll wrap this up. All right. Let's take a look, and this time I'm actually going to lay the fabric down instead of holding it like a fluttering flag in the wind here. Let's take a look here so you guys can see, and I want to point out what you're looking at and why. So I made my first row, right? I came over here, first row of long stitches. They look beautiful and balanced. I did a little bit of a back tack here. Got a little bit of that lower thread, came around and did another row. So far so good. And then I did another back tack, and you can see that here, but that's okay. Came around, then as I was explaining to you about how short the stitch can get, notice that when I was doing a short stitch here, but why am I seeing that? Remember, the bottom thread is yellow, but why am I seeing this yellow pop up? Is there something wrong with the machine? No. And I thought, well, maybe I have the tension on my tension dial up above too high, and it's pulling that lower thread up, because if your tension is too high on your tension dial, that'll happen. But it shouldn't be, and it's not. So what was happening? I was actually running out of space. I had gotten my, let's come over here and I'll show you. I had gotten here on my stitch length adjustment, I had gone so far up, I was getting too close to zero. Remember, there is a limit to how short any stitch can be made. So I lowered it back down, and when I did, I still have a short stitch, and you will see the difference down below. So I'm going to actually stand this up, maybe even show even a little bit better. So here's the row I made. Again, I came across, and I think I had, in fact, I'm sure I had the stitch too short. It did not have enough room. I came around here, I made a U-turn, and then you saw that last row I made, I still have an extremely short stitch, but that's as short as the stitch is going to be made. And you no longer see the sort of yellow pieces of bottom thread coming up. So whenever you are dealing with a vintage sewing machine, you've got different things to adjust. You've got your tension, obviously, right? So you have your upper tension here, which is where most of your adjustments should be made. Right now I have it right here, right on 3. That's not a lot of tension. So, if I had it way turned up to 5 and 6 and it was pulling up the bottom thread, I'd say, okay, let's adjust the tension. But that's not what was happening. And tension on the bobbin case, if I were having tension issues on the bobbin case, then I would typically either see, I would be seeing puckering. If it was too tight, I would have a lot of, my upper thread, the red thread would be too tight. And that's not happening. And if it were too loose, I would have loose, loopy top stitches, and I don't. These stitches look great. So I'm convinced that my bobbin case is fine. That leaves me with the upper tension. But if your upper tension is fine, well, what else is going on? It's your stitch length. Remember, These are analog machines, and they are beautifully engineered. But what do you get in return for that? You say, well, I'm going to have... What you do is you do what the first generation and the second and the third, how many generations have been sewing on machines of this era? You learn the machine. You learn where, you know, that shortest stitch is, and you don't go past there. So it's not difficult. It wasn't difficult for prior generations. They figured it out. We can figure it out too. Sometimes we get a little lulled into having everything so automatic, you know, like on our smartphones, for example, that we forget that things that are analog, electromechanical in this case, we have to learn them. We learn their ways. We learn what they need. And how do we know? It shows up here, right here in the stitching. I hope this video was helpful for any of you, whether you have a Singer 301 or whether you have any other vintage sewing machine. And remember that, yes, there's a few more things you do with an analog machine like this, but they give you something you're not going to get out of your smartphone. 75 years of service and still going, still ready. I don't know how many years into the future this machine will be used. I have no control over who has it and who takes care of it. But I'll tell you what, it has forgiven, all it's forgiven for its sitting without the maintenance, without the care that it needed. And it's ready to go. It's ready to sew again. So I hope that this is useful for you. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. Or if you would like to help my efforts in saving more of these machines, just click on the Buy Me a Coffee link and you can donate to the channel, and all the proceeds of that will go for helping me basically acquire more of these machines to save them, because once they're restored and ready to go, people will care for them again instead of thinking they're broke forever, in which case they end up in a landfill. Best case in a recycling center. That's terrible. Should never happen. Not with something that was made to be fixed, right? I am no more likely to put this in a landfill than I am my 1948 German clock. No. You have it serviced. I don't service clocks, by the way. Wish I did. But I take my clock to have it serviced. And if you are excited about taking on a project like this and you want to restore your machine, then there's plenty to learn. And if not, you can get a machine like this serviced and overhauled. You have to look for the right place to do it. But don't give up on the machines, because they're just waiting to be cared for. And that's why a lot of resources like this channel and others exist. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you in whatever my next video happens to be. Take care, everybody.